shout out a couple of people.
Okay, I'm going to admit all. Let's see who's there. Some familiar faces, some familiar names anyway, right? A number of your partners in crime from the docents, which is so lovely. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here with us on this newly snowy Sunday. We'll wait for some more people to make it in from the waiting room. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Chris Higgins is back from Tempe, Arizona. Hi, Chris. Welcome back. Thanks for coming. I guess we must have done something right to bring you back. Thank you so much. Okay. Alrighty. You're hooked. Chris says he's hooked. Good. That's our job. Then we've done our job right. And I don't think you'll be disappointed today. Oh, and David's thanking everybody for coming. Everybody, please meet our wonderful docent, David Lucas, who is going to be your host for today. People are still coming in. This is great. Okay.
And Sarah Linda, we are set going live on Facebook.
Excellent, wonderful. So we're here on Zoom, we're on Facebook. I want to thank my colleague Bridget McCormick for her hard work on today's program, and my wonderful docent David Lucas for his guiding everyone through landscape art and virtual travel. If you're wondering where you are, you're in the right place, a virtual tour of landscape art and virtual travel. And David will tell you a little bit about that exhibition and about what to expect from today's program. But for now, I think what I will do is introduce our docent of the day. We are so thrilled to be here with David, to have him here with us, certainly dressed for the great outdoors. David has been a volunteer docent at the Hudson River Museum for about 3 years now. It's gone by like that. And it is just so wonderful to be able to work with him. He brings so much to the table and is so supportive, not only of museum programming, but of his fellow docents. Prior to coming to us, he spent a lengthy career as an art director in the private brand division of Macy's, designing packaging, visual merchandising, and signage for the store chain. Subsequently, he served as an adjunct professor at City Tech of the City University of New York, teaching graphic design to undergraduates. And until COVID-19 caused the park not to open, he was the official graphic designer for Playland Amusement Park in Rye, New York. He also works as a freelancer and designed last year's exhibition at the Hudson River Museum, Through Our Eyes. He hails originally from Washington, D.C., where he attended the School Without Walls High School and was fortunate enough to have internships in the Discover Graphics print studio and the education office at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. He earned a BFA at Carnegie Mellon University. And we will see today how all of that experience feeds into what he does as a docent and a wonderful tour guide. David actually lives 2 blocks from the Hudson River Museum, so he's always on call. Thank you so much, David, and I hope everyone enjoys your tour.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I'd first like to just have a couple of shout outs. Bridget is going to talk to you just in a second about how we're going to run the tour. But Bridget McCormick is my wonderful partner in crime who did a lot of the work here putting this presentation together. But I'd also like to say hi to some of the people who are tuning in. My sister Jan from Virginia, and my friend Chris, who's on screen from Albany, and Graham, who's visiting from Northern England, or well, not Northern England, but the Lake Country, and Louise. Hey, so we've got some people watching from far afield. Bridget?
Thanks, David. Welcome, everyone. We just have a couple housekeeping notes to make about this program. Please do keep yourself muted. We will have time at the conclusion of the program to have some discussion. But while David is doing his presentation, we're going to ask you to use the chat only. At which point I will be relaying some responses to David's questions throughout this tour to him, but use the chat. And at the end, again, we will have some time for more discussion. And other than that, please feel free to use the chat to also just add comments, questions, or observations at any point, even if David's not asking you something specific. So I believe that is it. We're also streaming on Facebook Live. So if you're watching on Facebook, please enjoy. We are not monitoring comments and questions on Facebook Live at this time, but we're glad that you're tuning in that way. So I think we are ready to go.
Yep. Thanks, Bridget. So let's look at the title slide. So the tour is called Landscape, Art, and Virtual Travel. Highlights from the collection of the Hudson River Museum and Art Bridges. Now, Art Bridges is sort of it's almost like a library. It's a program that the Crystal Bridges Museum in Arkansas, that's the Walton family, by the way, it's supposedly one of the best museums in the United States. And they have a program where they will actually loan some of their holdings to other museums. So the Hudson River Museum over the past couple of years has been getting work from this Art Bridges program to sort of bolster what's already in the Hudson River Museum collection. And it's usually when you first walk into the museum, there'll be some things from Art Bridges on the first level, if any of you have been to the museum. We'll look at the next slide, Bridget. This is exactly what's on the wall when you first walk into the exhibition. At a time when the pandemic has forced us to redefine tourism, landscape art and virtual travel celebrates artists' striking ability to transport us to real and imaginary places. The experience of travel restrictions reminds us that journeys of the mind can be freeing. The 19th to 21st century artworks on view shed light on the power of artists to influence our ideas and actions regarding our relationship to nature and how to protect it. The exhibition also demonstrates some of the ways in which Native Americans, African Americans, and other marginalized people have historically been denied ownership and connection to American soil. American landscape paintings have always been intertwined with explorations of the great outdoors. In the 19th century, Hudson River School painters, and we do have a good collection of Hudson River School painters at the museum, they brought distant places into the homes of their patrons. Prints and travel books inspired a growing middle class to travel to those destinations. Today, artists continue to bring the world to us and send us out on our own adventures. Experiencing nature, including through images, benefits us emotionally and physically, demonstrating just one of the ways in which art can have a positive impact on our lives. Consider how art, as well as the nature it depicts, can soothe and refresh us, help us understand ourselves, and broaden our experiences of the world. How does this history of a terrain, evident or hidden, change the way we feel about exploring it for ourselves? Ultimately, we believe that landscape art encourages a thoughtful consideration and an expanded appreciation of our relationship with our green spaces, which can offer a respite in these difficult times. So when you go into the museum in real life and walk through the doors, the first thing you'll see in the exhibition is a large piece by Cynthia Dagneau called Light Atlas. It was from 2016, and there are 360 oil on linen canvases. Each canvas is about 8 by 10 inches. So take a look at this. Bridget, let's look at the close-up. Because I want everybody to take a look at it for just a second. We do that a lot at the, on our tours. We make people tell us what they're seeing. So we are, there are two things in particular that I want people to tell me if they see. Two things that are in common about every one of these canvases. So put in the chat what you see, if anything, that's in common. Cynthia Dagneau took a trip around the United States. She had been thinking that she could name a lot of artists, visual artists, writers, musicians, people like Thomas Cole and Mark Twain, Bob Dylan, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Walker Evans, Robert Frank, Ed Ruscha, people like that. She could name all these men who are associated with the American landscape. And she couldn't think of any women, and she decided that she was going to be that person. So she drew a pencil line around the United States, a 30,000 mile trip all the way around the US, and figured out a stop every 27 miles where she would take photographs and do sketches, and that would be her art, her installation, her big major piece of work. And so she created these 360 canvases. In the museum, it wraps around 4 wall surfaces, and it is a wonderful piece. I absolutely adore this piece. To me, it was this and the Hockney that you'll see in a minute were worth it just to go into the museum to see those 2 pieces. Let's see what everybody said that they see in common. That Audrey, nail on the head. Horizon is in the same place. I couldn't figure that out myself. There's a lot of green. No people. There are no people anywhere on this. Yes, Annette, everything is daytime, and there's land and sky and everything. Great observations, everybody. So we have a picture of Cynthia. That's what she looks like. And then in the next slide, because I think why I really responded to her paintings is because on the few occasions that I try to paint myself, it's exactly the way I want to paint. I mean, when I look at her work, it's what I try to achieve when I get my acrylics and canvas, out and try to do something. This is actually a painting that I did of a scene at Stratton Mountain, and I painted it for some friends' wedding. It was a wedding present because we used to all ski there together. So I really feel a very personal connection to Dagneau because it's what I would like to do if I had the skill. Next. This is a view of the upstairs of the museum. So what you're seeing is you're kind of seeing through the well where the main exhibition space is, and you're seeing the way the exhibition is mounted, just so you have a sense of place. Next. We have the museum has quite a number of prints in the collection. This is a piece by Thomas Moran, and it is called Cross in the Rockies. Thomas Moran is kind of very important in not just in American art. He was somebody who would go out and create these gigantic paintings that would get exhibited and show people what it looked like out west at a time when they might not normally have been able to see what things look like out there. This is 1888, and it is an etching, and it is. Etching, of course, is you can actually take your etching plates with you on site. Etching plates are metal plates with a waxy covering, and you scratch into it with a needle, and you get all your textures You take it back to where your printing press is, and you make your prints. So this is a Thomas Moran piece. And by the way, Thomas Moran going out west and coming back and painting and doing prints is one of the things that that gets Americans interested in preserving what is out west. If it had not been for Thomas Moran, Congress might not have created the first national park in Yellowstone. It could have all been developed. But at the same time, you do have photography, and Crossing the Rockies actually was inspired by a photograph taken by a Moran companion named William Henry Jackson. And he did a painting in 1875, but this print is from, I'm sorry, painting is from 1875, and the print is 1888. And let's look at the next one. This is also a print of from a painting by Thomas Moran, but he did not do his own print in this case. This is a wood engraving, and it is actually in a book that's in the museum's collection. And the book is called Picturesque America. The book was edited by William Cullen Bryant. Anybody know who that? Anybody familiar with the name of William Cullen Bryant as a writer and editor? There's a park named after him. That is what Bryant Park in New York City is named after. So this piece is a wood engraving called Marble Cañon. Cañon is the Spanish origin of the word canyon, and it is a piece from that Picturesque America book. So, something that was also instrumental in getting people out west. At this time, you have the very famous exploration of the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon by John Wesley Powell in 1869. There are some wonderful photographs, if you've ever seen them, of John Wesley Powell rafting down the canyon. Nobody had, no Europeans had traveled through the Grand Canyon, and the amazing thing about John Wesley Powell is he had one arm. So he probably wasn't much help paddling with the others, but he was a real amazing character out of American exploration and history. Next. This is an engraving. The engraver is named James Smiley, but the original artwork is by Thomas Cole, and it is called The Voyage of Life. The Voyage of Life was a series of 4 large-scale paintings that Thomas Cole executed, and it's an allegory. It is a man's life starting as an infant, a youth, a grown man, and an old man. And you see him in a boat with angels at the helm, going down a river that represents life. He painted the series twice. The first time was in 1840, and the second time was in 1842. And one of the series is actually in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. When I got into high school, I had a project, an independent study project, where one of my close friends and I spent time with a docent at the museum, and we would meet with him probably on a weekly basis and work on we had to come up with a research paper. And he introduced us to The Voyage of Life, which, to our, teenaged eyes, in the city of Washington, we found it exceedingly hokey. We would go and look at it and laugh at it because it was just so cheesy in its own way. It's a series of really exquisite, beautiful paintings, but it is, especially when you get to the boat and you get to what's happening on the boat, the guy in the boat, and the angels reacting to what's happening to the guy in the boat, it's just a little hokey. And we would literally just kind of laugh at it. But it's something it's a series that I've really kind of come to love. Uh, when I was talking with Bridget and kind of going through the slides, we were thinking about what do things in this painting remind you, or this print remind you of? Does anybody see anything in particular that they're reminded of in the background? Yes, thanks, Bridget. Circle that that castle. Does that remind anybody of anything? Taj Mahal, absolutely. Yeah, definitely the Taj Mahal. Cole did make up his own architecture, and just like to kind of go crazy in terms of what buildings look like. Anybody else? Bridget, do you want to say what it reminded you of?
Yeah, I just wrote in the chat too. I just kept thinking about the Wizard of Oz.
Definitely the Wizard of Oz. I mean, that big geodesic dome around everything. Disney for sure. Thanks, Sarah Linda. Anyway, that is the Voyage of Life. Let's go on to the next one. Asher B. Durand is a really major American landscape painter of the Hudson River School. He's one of the first American painters to see landscape as painting. Previous to Durand and Cole, if there was a landscape painting in somebody's home, it was often to show what that person owned. It was to show their possessions, and not necessarily to be symbolic of nature or of the sublime, of the beauty of the American landscape. So Durand is one of the first in that sense. And he traveled to areas beyond the Hudson Valley in terms of finding places to paint. In this case, he and Cole both, Thomas Cole, the painter, both go up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire in 1839. This is a landscape painted later in the 1855 to 1860. And it is likely to be the White Mountains of New Hampshire. One interesting thing about Asher Durand is, unlike some of the other people that we've been looking at, Durand actually starts off being trained as an engraver to make printing plates, and then transitions from being a commercial artist to becoming a fine artist. So he starts off making prints, and then trains and does landscapes in oil, rather than some of the other people who started off painting, and then either they or somebody else would do prints from their originals. Next. James McElhenney last year had a really extraordinary show at the Hudson River Museum. This is called Hudson Valley Sketchbook. Take a moment to look at it. Some of you Hudson Valley neighbors, see if you can identify where that is, and drop that into the chat. McElhenney is particular in that his final artworks tend to be the sketchbooks. So it's not like he's sketching something in preparation necessarily for doing a large scale painting or drawing or anything else. The final piece is the sketchbook. So he picks an area, in this case, the Hudson River itself, and traveled up and down the Hudson River, doing site-specific drawings, sketches, and watercolors. I mean, he typically works with this brown-colored archival pen, and then does his outlines of everything, and then works over that in watercolor, and annotates things in his own writing down at the bottom. But the sketchbook number 3 art piece is an entire book full of these sketches. And he sells these to the people, individuals, and institutions with a beautiful, fancy box. though he does do editions of prints. So he'll do prints on archival paper with an inkjet process and replicate the sketchbooks in multiple copies and then sell those as well and have those exhibited. And Nancy Vincent, yes, we think this is, we're pretty sure this is the view from Boscobel up the Hudson River. One of the, if anybody has not been there, make sure that you get to the Boscobel restoration, which is one of New York's most beautiful homes and oldest homes, and did not have this view when it was built. It was going to be demolished. It was dismantled, carted away. All the pieces were numbered, and after 10 or 20 years, they rebuilt it in an even better spot up the Hudson Valley. Next, this landscape, in this show, there are landscapes that are done different ways. This landscape is actually a digital photograph printed onto aluminum. The artist is named Jordan Matter. Maybe somebody can guess where they think this one is from. So we are, I'll give you a hint. We are seeing the Hudson River from this spot. Jordan Matter had an exhibit of dancers all in different locations. This is a particular dancer named Evgenia Chermukina. She was also a gymnast, so there was probably a 100-foot drop right in front of her, and she was not particularly terrified when the photograph was taken. Jordan Matter is a commercial photographer, and so this, may feel a little bit commercially in terms of its scope. Matter says, dancers are trained to capture passion with their bodies. They often create a fantasy world or offers a deeper look into familiar settings. Fort Tryon Park, exactly, it's Fort Tryon Park at the tip of Manhattan. So how does this make anybody feel emotionally? How would you feel in terms of standing on this wall and having this view? Just think about that. Bridget will go to the next one. I think some of you may have been fortunate enough to see the studio tour last week with Allison Mortsugu. It was a wonderful, wonderful view into this particular artist. And a little bit about Ms. Mortsugu. She grew up in Hawaii, and she grew up with the awareness that that in a paradise like Hawaii, it's a place where a lot of the income in Hawaii comes from the tourist industry, and the tourist industry is a real double-edged sword. And it's the same kind of thing that some of the later Hudson School painters were kind of looking at and thinking about when they were working. Mortsugu is enamored of the Hudson River School painters like Cole and Durand and Jasper Cropsey from Hastings, who ended up in Hastings on Hudson, right near us. But her work tends to be primarily painted on wood that is barely touched in terms of anything but just being cut into sections. So she does, in her process, she actually she works in oils, she primes and paints. But for instance, she loves the idea that her paint surfaces will have cracks or ruts in them, as you see in this piece. Bridget, can we focus in a little bit on one of the zoom in on one of the panels of this? So if you look at this piece, rather than sort of eradicate and fill in that one crack in the middle of the log, she just leaves that there, and it's a real part of every piece that she does. Let's zoom back out. in the studio tour the other day, she showed a number of pieces where she took sections of logs and covered a wall with them. And in each little circle or oval of the log section was a different piece of a landscape. So here's a question for everybody. Is this one landscape where you're seeing two views of it, almost like looking through binoculars, or is this two separate landscapes that we're looking at? Tell me in the chat what everybody thinks, and then I'll tell you what I know. Her log works actually began. Some of you have probably heard of Yaddo, which is the very famous artist studio where artists can spend a summer working with painters, with writers, with poets. So it was her spending time at Yaddo where they had cut down some trees and left some parts that got her into the idea of painting on log sections. There I believe is one at Yaddo where she painted on a log so big that tree section that was so big and it was just left there to sort of deteriorate. Yes, the answer is that it is one landscape with two views of it. So there's sort of you can imagine what's in between those two ovals is the rest of the landscape, which I think is really pretty amazing. Let's look at before just kind of picture this in your mind, let's look at the next piece, because at first I didn't understand why this was in the exhibition. Maybe we can make that a little bit bigger, Bridget, if we zoom in just a touch. This is a piece by Hiram Powers. And so this is in our landscape exhibition. Can somebody tell me why they think this belongs in a landscape exhibition? Just a couple ideas. Hiram Powers in the late 1800s was one of America's most accomplished sculptors. And there's a large number of them at the American Art Museum and the Smithsonian. So I kind of grew up looking at these Hiram Powers nudes. They're often nudes. Annette, yeah, Eve is in a landscape. The landscape is sort of is in your imagination, but yeah, where is Eve going to be? Always in the landscape. Another reason why I think that this is in the exhibition is because there's actually there's a log in it. So it is right near the Mortsugu log piece. And so they're actually kind of having a dialogue, these two sculptural pieces of artwork. And of course, there's another practical reason why this is in every show, almost every show in the museum on the first floor, which is that it's made out of marble and it probably weighs a ton and you can't move it. So the museum, the curators will always figure out something to put around it so that it makes sense that Eve is sitting there in that same spot. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of a portrait than a landscape, but I think it's kind of fun to have it there. Next piece. This is a painting by one of my favorite untrained painters, Horace Pippin. It's called Holy Mountain 1 from 1944. And it's oil on canvas. It was this is on loan from the Art Bridges collection. And I did a little research on Horace Pippin himself because I really didn't know much about him. I found out that as a child, he liked to paint, and he entered a contest with an art supply shop where he grew up, and he won the contest and got watercolors and crayons. Pippin ends up in World War I, being sent off to Europe in the 369th Regiment. He's African American. He is in the Harlem Hellfighters, the very, very famous regiment that gets the Croix de Guerre, despite the fact that they are treated like crap by their American counterparts. But they excel in World War I. And but Pippin actually gets shot in the shoulder by a German sniper. He ends up back in the United States, and he starts to pick up painting again, in part because it is really kind of art therapy for him to help his injured shoulder when he gets back. What do you see in this painting? And also, especially for some of the docents, what does it remind you of? There's a particular painting that immediately came to mind to me when I first saw it. Any thoughts? So kind of a lot going on in here, but it's just such a wonderful, wonderful piece. Yeah, the crosses in the woods, that there's just sort of hidden in the background, almost like the eyes of animals. Does this painting remind anybody of anything? I'll just say what it reminds me of. It reminded me very much of what we would call a primitive painting from the early American painters. Thank you, Nancy. The Peaceable Kingdom by Edward Hicks. I really thought of that immediately when I saw this terrific painting. And I think we can go on to the next one. This is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful piece. It is one of several of David Hockney's studies or paintings of the Grand Canyon. And this one has 15 panels. It's sort of wall height, and actually this rendering doesn't quite get across how spectacular the color is in this piece. And so it is a study of the Grand Canyon. There's another Grand Canyon painting that Hockney, or series that Hockney has, where there are, I think, 60 different panels, probably the same size, but it's museum scale study of painting the Grand Canyon. In a case like this, do you think you're looking at, if you took a photograph of this, would you see exactly these same elements in these same spots? Anybody thoughts? One thing that this is from 1998. David Hockney, who's British but had relocated to the LA area once he found the sort of freedom and the beautiful weather, the relatively inexpensive houses, all of them with swimming pools in the LA area. He spends a lot of his career actually in Southern California, and then does some traveling around to the Grand Canyon. He precedes this piece with a series of photographs. Bridget, let's drop back to, or go forward to the photo books for a second. These are actually just books. This is a book I have at home of Hockney's photo collage work. And for a lot of his career, starting in the 80s, he started to do these photo pieces where he would just, on the right-hand side, he'd just take a regular point-and-shoot camera and take pictures of just picture after picture after picture, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures of the same place or a person or an interior, and he would take these pictures and just sort of, freehand shooting around a location, and then he would put them all back together in pieces. I think he would literally send these out to the photo mat and have them come back, as commercial photos and just put them back together. He also had Hockney was and is very, very, very into technologies and finding the best ways to use those technologies. Some of his recent work he's done on the iPad using a drawing app where he just picks up the iPad, draws freehand with it, and then can print out or display some of his work. Some of the iPad work is displayed in real time, so they actually see the brushstrokes as he's doing them. But in the right hand spread in the book, what we're seeing is a grid of this wonderful grid of Polaroids that he did. So if we go back to the Grand Canyon, Bridget, you're going to kind of see that he's kind of taking bits and pieces of the Grand Canyon and in the style of the Cubists, you're not really seeing exactly what you're going to see when you look into the Grand Canyon. You're seeing more than you're seeing in the Grand Canyon. You're seeing more color. You're seeing more items. You're just seeing more of everything. So he can give you the sense of being there, which is the whole point of this exhibition. That's it for Hockney. Jeremy Dennis is a contemporary photographer, and he's experimenting with perspectives, but he's also kind of his subject matter is not just landscape or waterscape, but it has to do with what's behind the landscape. Whose land is it? Jeremy Dennis happens to be from the Shinnecock American Indian people of Long Island. I mean, this is the Hamptons, mind you. These are what we're looking at is a piece of some of the most desirable real estate in America, and what we're seeing is a landscape that his Indian ancestors might have been looking at, 300, 400 years ago. He asked the question, this is, or makes the statement, this is once where we were and are still here. People go out to the Hamptons. They're not aware that there's a reservation for the Shinnecocks out on the towards the tip of the island. There's a beautiful light in this piece, and it's certainly reminiscent of some of the Hudson River School paintings. There's something that looking at this piece, it's an archival inkjet print. So it is not exactly on photographic paper, but it's a photographic process. How do you think this is one shot with a standard lens, or something a little bit different? Anybody have any thoughts? Any photographers want to weigh in on what we're seeing in this print? We'll give it a second if anybody wants to chime in. If not, I'll tell you what I think. I think, yeah, Pamela, I think you're right. I think it's a panorama. There's a curvature happening in the entire piece that you would not necessarily get if you were just shooting with a regular shot. Or Graham, that's possible too. It could have been a couple of shots that are photoshopped together, almost the way Hockney works. So that's a possibility too. I hadn't even thought of the fact that you can do things with Photoshop that nobody could do years ago. Thanks, Sarah Linda. The Asher Durand split focus idea. If you're painting, yeah, you can paint in a panorama. You can look around you. That's a little more, it takes a little more technology to do that sort of thing if you're doing it with a photographic process. Let's go on to the next piece. This is another one of my favorites in the museum's collection. It is a painting called Friday, and it's by Richard Mayhew, who is, I don't think he's working now, but he's still alive, and I think he lives in Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken. He's of African American and also American Indian extraction, and he has Shinnecock himself on his father's side, and Cherokee and Lumbee on his mother's side of his family. His paintings kind of seem like real places, but they are not photographic reproductions of real places. Typically, they're more imaginary. They kind of have the mood or emotion or focus of a real place. Bridget pointed out Mayhew's working in California now, and he's 96. More power to Richard Mayhew. If you look at his body of work, this is one of the rarer pieces where he's sort of painting in golden tones. A lot of his work is warmer in tone. He uses a lot of purples and oranges and reds. But this is just such a wonderful piece. You can almost feel that you're there on maybe a Friday afternoon in the summer. The air is warm. You know, when we're showing this to school groups, we ask them what they might hear in the background. You know, and they're probably hearing crickets and what are you smelling? What are you feeling? I think this painting really gives you a sense of place and gives you a sense of environment. Even more so than some of the things that are photographic. I find that this really makes you feel like you were there. And Richard Mayhew never paints people in his paintings. You are the it's the portrait of you in the painting. You're in it. Let's go on to the next piece. And this is also the subject of a large exhibition that the museum had a few years ago. This is by Frohock Two Feathers. The title of this is Map of the Franglish Kingdom of Novum Eboracum, or New York. We all got to have a place we call home. It's from 2015, and the media is acrylic with ink, graphite, tea, and coffee on paper. So he's drawing, he's painting, but he's also using the tea and coffee to age the surface. So this feels like something that's 300 years old. And yeah, Bridget, let's zoom in on it and get close to it. Can anybody tell me what map we're looking at in terms of the map? Should be pretty self-explanatory. Should look familiar to a lot of us. At the top of this piece is a cartouche with his information kind of written in, and some dates, 1791 to 1793. This is taking place in the nation of the Franglish. So about Frohock Two Feathers, it is the alter ego of an artist named Umar Rashid, and he has invented a very, very hugely elaborate alternative history for this is the Hudson River. We're looking at the Hudson River, and it's pretty much accurate to the watershed of the Hudson River. So Frohock Two Feathers invented this alternative history out of bits and pieces of real history. But in his history, the African Americans and the Native peoples have a little bit more important and a bit of a different role. He's mashing it all up with things like the history of ancient Egypt and Masonic brotherhood imagery, a lot of European stuff. In his alternate universe, the French and the English are aligned more closely in the development of the United States, in the settlement of the United States by Europe, but they're also kind of working in cahoots with the Africans and the American Indians. What we're looking at here is a series of a number of soldiers, and they're all surrounding a young a young quote unquote pharaoh whose name is Bonnie Prince Johnny. The catalog to the book is called Kill Your Best Ideas, the catalog to the exhibition. And rather than being a straightforward catalog, it's Frohawk Two Feathers alternate history of New York. And it is just crazy, funny, interesting, historic, and just kind of mashes everything all together in a blender. Let's go on to the next piece. How are we doing for time?
You're about 45 minutes in, David.
Okay, all right. So we'll have a little time for Q&A, real live Q&A maybe at the end. This is a pencil on paper piece that is a part of the museum collection by Marie Louise Bascom Brevard. This is a location in Vermont, Castleton, where our compatriot Bridget is from. Just let's see, Castleton is just south of where you're from, Bridget, right?
Yes, actually, it's in the western part of Rutland County, so it's actually very close to the New York State border. It's in an area where there are a lot of slate mines and marble quarries.
Oh, cool.
Just a fun fact. Yeah, and there's a small university there, and it's got a really beautiful kind of main street. And it's a historic district with lots of great houses. So if you're ever in that area, it's right off of Route 4.
Okay. I drive normally without COVID, I would be in Vermont. I would have been in Vermont on Friday. And sometimes we go up to Sugarbush or so we'll drive right north, just north of Castleton. Marie Brevard Marie Brevard was married to another Hudson River School artist, James Renwick Brevard, and the museum has work by the both of them, work that they might have actually created together in the same location. And Marie Brevard taught painting in Rutland, in Vermont, and she also studied at the National Academy of Design. She was an award winner, winning the Elliott Silver Medal for figure drawing. So this is a lovely pencil on paper of Castleton, which I will have to visit if I ever get to Vermont again. Let's look at the next one. This is Butterfield Road Intersection by Marsha Clark. And Marsha Clark in the like late 60s, early 70s, lived up near New Paltz. So Butterfield Road is actually this intersection itself is in the sort of bottomland outside of New Paltz, New York, where the university is. And what when you drive through that intersection, it will going west, it'll lead you up to the Mohawk Mountain Preserve, where the famous Mohawk Mountain House is. So she's she's a landscape painter. She also is inspired by Thomas Cole. She was inspired at the beginning of her career by him, but is looking for her own way of getting that view of multiple things at one time. And so in this piece, she's actually created it and made it three-dimensional itself. She says the view was always seemed too big and too long for any of the paintings she attempted. So living with the view was probably pivotal in turning her attention to painting the challenges of getting a panoramic sweep onto a two-dimensional format. And of course, that's Marsha Clark right next to her piece. We'll go on to Don Nice. This is Mount Hook. Mount Hook is just above Nyack on the other side from most of us on the Hudson. So he's similar to Daniel, who opened the show. He's a contemporary artist who enjoys the journey, the passage. This piece was done on a 1999 trip from Manhattan all the way up to the Adirondacks. At a certain on that trip, I believe the curator for the museum, the Hudson River Museum at the time, Ellen Kiter, joined him for part of the trip, and she recalled that it was choppy on the water, but he claimed that the rocking of the boat made it easier, not harder, for him to work. So we believe that this would have been painted from a boat of some sort, and it is, it's a little, we've had a different view of it if he had been painting from the land on the other side of the Hudson from Hook Mountain. The medium is watercolor on paper. Watercolor, of course, being very immediate, and you can pick it up and throw it in your backpack and go with it. But it's also a very difficult technique because for some of you have done watercolors, you can't fix your mistakes, and you have to kind of know what you're going to do at the very beginning, because you're building translucent pieces or bits of color, and it's almost impossible to go back and undo what you've done once you've done it. So this is a wonderful watercolor. And our last piece, now this is not everything in the exhibition, but this is probably about 2/3 of what's in it. But mind you, things come and go because of the relationship with Art Bridges. Pieces will come into the collection or come into the museum in an exhibition, and then they'll disappear again, and something will come in and replace it. So what's actually not up right now, you can go see the exhibition now, but what's not in it at this moment is a piece by Ana Mendieta. It's called En Culturas Rupestres. I don't speak Spanish, I'm just trying. But the title is Rupestrian Sculptures. The word Rupestrian, had to look it up. It means marks made on a cave walls or rocks. So that is Rupestrian. Ana Mendieta, and this piece is, we're not sure exactly how it's going to be shown in the gallery, but probably on a monitor or an iPad. The original piece is Super 8mm film, but it's been transferred to digital. It's a black and white silent film. And Ana Mendieta's work was primarily film, and very often it is autobiographical. She was born in Cuba, and then ends up, her family ends up having to leave Cuba. She ends up in the United States, and she is a pioneering feminist artist. Was a pioneering feminist artist. Also worked in a lot of her art was about the land and about ecology. She also pioneered in video. So this piece is fairly early in video, 1981. She would often do things where she's in the landscape, or a representative of her is in the landscape. For instance, she sculpts herself on a beach, and then then films the waves taking her away, or a representation of herself is made out of fireworks, and they burn up and leave a burning heart. So she has some wonderful work. In this particular piece, the symbolic feminine form that we're seeing is inspired by the native islanders' Taino goddess, and so that's part of what would be seen in this piece. She had a very tragic end to her life. Ana Mendieta had been married to another artist for just 8 months or so, And his name is Carl Andre. They lived at 300 Mercer in the city on the 34th floor. They have an argument, and she falls from the 34th floor to her death. He is called into question, and he is exonerated of any of murder. And the Dia Foundation did a show on Andre in 2014, and protesters showed up in transparent track suits with animal blood and entrails all around, and protested it. She could have been she could have been working and had a much longer career, but she dies very tragically. And on that happy note, that is the last piece in the exhibition. So thanks for listening. We thought we would open it up to live chat if anybody has anything that they wanted to talk about or add or ask or any comments. But that's it for my prepared talk.
Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments? Richard, I guess we have to unmute.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, hi.
Hi. Is the tour of Alison Mortsugu's studio, has that been archived at all? Was that
Nancy?
recorded?
Yes, Nancy, if you look in the chat,
Mhm.
it is available on Facebook at this point. Let's see where we are. I put it in a little bit earlier. We are working on making it available on our YouTube channel, but for now, I did put a link to the Facebook tour in the chat somewhere. I'm going through the chat again.
All right.
For it. So if you scroll up, you should be able to find it.
She was a lot of fun to listen to. It really, and
somehow I missed it, and I'm really fascinated by that one shot you showed us of that log. That's
the tip of the iceberg. So some of her full wall pieces will just knock your socks off. But it was really great to listen to her talk and to see her studio. You're literally getting a tour of her painting studio up at the Hudson Valley.
Here we go.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do it.
I'm going to put it in the chat again for you, Nancy. It'll be at the bottom of the chat. Okay, it's coming right up. That's the Facebook link.
Okay,
Allison, and if it's easier, I don't know if everybody's on Facebook, but you'll be able to see it on the YouTube channel soon. Takes a while sometimes to get things, to upload things, but
and the YouTube channel is you go into YouTube and just search for Hudson River Museum.
Yep, and then
all right, because I might be going that route because I'm not a big Facebook.
Right, so it's not there yet. But what is there is the program with Cynthia Daniel, Postcards from America. That is already up on the YouTube channel, and I put that.
I'm fascinated by her work, so I'll look that up in the meantime too. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Here, I'm going to put it in. I'll put that in again too, just so that it's at the bottom, because there's a lot of comments in here. So here we go. This is the Cynthia Daniel link coming right up.
How long, David, did she take to do this, this project, complete, her installation that you have in the museum? A year or two or three?
I don't think it was that long. No. Anybody remember how long she was out? I think it was over the course of Well, let's see. We could do the math. She did 27 miles a day,
Okay.
and 360 locations. So it wasn't that long.
Okay.
Now that
Yep.
doesn't mean that was just in terms of, actually, no, she didn't necessarily do 27 miles a day. That would be too long. She probably
That's
she
when
did 27 miles
jogged in my
at a
memory
time.
when you
Yeah.
said 27 miles a day, and I was thinking, whoa, okay.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
No, slow progress.
Yeah, but I don't think she was traveling that long, but I'm sure it took her a lot longer to do the paintings.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you
And
think
she
about
would
it,
stop
sure.
at 27 miles.
Yeah.
Record what she saw. Yeah.
Yeah, that one piece really takes a lot of time to see, and it is not, it's not in any order either. She, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she said that she does not dictate the order of the paintings when they get installed. Isn't that right? I'm pretty sure we asked, at some point we asked the question, do you tell the installer what shape to put them all in, or what goes first? And she specifically did not.
David, my belief is that there is an order, but the arrangement is up to the curator.
Okay.
So I've seen it in one location that had a lot of running feet. They were just one after the other.
Wow.
Like running on the horizon, 360 small paintings.
That's
right?
pretty cool.
Ours goes sort of snakes. Starts, at the top, right? So it starts at the top, you go down, and then you go up, and then you go down, and then you go up. So there is a kind of a narrative to it. But as someone pointed out earlier, the horizon matches up. It's uncanny.
That's an interesting device. Yes.
Yeah, it really makes it a lot of fun. Anybody else have anything they want to comment on, or a question that we may or may not be able to answer?
Hello, David.
Hi.
Hi, I cannot see you, but I did see the slides, and it was very interesting and very instructive. I learned new things, of course, and things which I saw before, but you brought a new perspective to them. I'm just curious, why did you choose to present at the end the Rupestrian sculpture? I mean, it's, we ended on a kind of dark note, although,
Yeah, sorry about that. Originally we were going to end with a preview of a show that is also up at the same time, but then he will have his own his own talk. So
Okay.
I have to apologize for ending on a terrible story, but
well, this definitely makes it more dramatic. Yes, and it makes us remember the artist and think about make some of us want to see what other kind of work she did.
Yeah, it's fairly easy
Yeah.
just by Googling her name, I was able to come up with some beautiful videos of her work. So
of her work, yes. I liked your comments and on works which I saw many times, but I didn't think about this, like Mount Hook by Donnis, which I see many times, from Nyack. And I imagine what must have been to do this painting on chopping waters on a boat. and I didn't know also that you cannot correct paintings which you did in watercolor. So there are some very practical insights which you brought to this presentation. I also like to, I appreciate your details on lives of various artists. Like, I didn't know much about Marie-Louise Bascon-Brivort. I didn't know that she was, she studied at National Academy of Design. Her drawings are beautiful. And I also learned about Castleton, Vermont, which I like to visit often.
Yeah,
That part
okay.
of the state, yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you
By
very
the
much.
way, in case you're wondering what the landscape is behind me, that
Yes.
is Vermont.
Oh, yeah, I was about to ask where exactly in Vermont is that? Because
I think it's
looks
Stratton.
very, it's what,
I think
Stratton?
it's Stratton
Okay.
Mountain.
Yeah.
I'm not positive, but it's one of the. It's definitely one of the ski resorts that I normally go to every winter.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, it's nice to see a familiar landscape and to dream of going back. I don't go skiing, but we go hiking there quite often. Well, thank you very, very much for your work, your presentation. It was really a pleasure, a treat. Thank you.
Yes, yes, a wonderful escape.
Well, that's virtual travel, so we can
Yes.
virtually travel. We may choose not to travel to the park where Rupestrian Sculpture was set outside of Havana quite yet, but we do take away the memory of a really important feminist artist, and things that you will be able to see at the museum in the new year. Are there any other questions? Because what I'd love to do is just give you a bit of a preview of what's coming up. If there are no more questions or comments in the chat, or anybody want to make a comment to David? Are we all good? All right, David, thank you so much. Yes. It's wonderful. And as you know, as Nancy and Frederica said, you know, no matter how many times you see these images, there's something new to see, because we're always looking at things with new eyes, because we're different every day. So what we see is going to be different every day. And Bridget, thank you so much for your work and facilitation. I do want to, yeah, I mean, I do want to say that you can see the exhibition through August 8th, 2021. And if you have some time between Christmas and New Year's, we're actually open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week before Christmas and New Year's. That's the 28th through the 31st, from 12 to 5 with timed slots. So we have a couple extra days in there in which you can see the exhibition, as well as the exhibit Women to the Fore, which is closing on January 3rd. And it's just so wonderful to have artists like Cynthia Danyo and Alison Mortsugu in the exhibit, because they kind of straddle the themes of the two exhibitions. And we also have a teaching artist in residence, Julia Santos Solomon, whose work is in Women to the Fore. And she is doing workshops. She did one for us last month, and she's doing one in January on the 16th, let's see, what day is it? On the 17th, which is inspired by Cynthia Danyo's landscapes. It's called Landscapes in Miniature. So that's going to be January 17th from 3:30 to 5. And she will be really giving, she's in her studio, and it'll be a hands-on lesson in constructing a landscape and kind of shrinking it to.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that should be really, really fun if you enjoy that work. And we also have Bridget doing a program the day before based on Cynthia's work and the sense of sound. So there's lots of programs coming up. Just check our calendar, and we want to thank you so much for being here and taking time out in this busy weekend, pre-holiday. Everybody stay well, and
Yes.
have wonderful holidays and a happy new year.
Thank you. I wish you the same.
Thank you.